Was the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the Kaliningrad.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do you have to say about that, guys? Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the latest edition of Global Atheist News Review, where we have a panel of wise people to give their opinions about the news. Today we have D.P. Higgs from British Columbia, Scott Weigold from California, Tercia Duplessis from South Africa, Guy Otten from Manchester, and Frank Lovell from Kentucky. We also may be joined later on by David Orenstein from Manhattan, but he couldn't make the beginning of the show. So we'll add him in if he arrives later. Okay, guys, thank you very much for coming. Here's our first news item, I think. No, I haven't got it. Oh, where's it gone? Oh, this is useless.
Is it the Iran police fire on mourners for the female protester's funeral?
Yes, it is, but that's not the crib sheet I'm looking for. Give me a minute, please. Oh, dearie me. This one. Okay. Yeah. So, in Tehran. No, not that one. Beg your pardon. I clicked on it and it came up wrongly. Okay, this time.
What do you do with a drunken sailor?
The Iranian security forces have opened fire on crowds near Tehran when they were mourning a woman who was shot dead while protesting. There's been 2 or 3 of these events where mourners were at the graveside and crowds were there trying, indeed overcoming the fact that the security forces had closed off the roads to the cemeteries. They managed to make their way around the roadblocks and converge on the site, but they've made life difficult, even to commemorate the death of these women who were shot dead while protesting just because they don't want to be forced to wear a hijab. What do you think of that, guys?
What is the response of other countries? Like I saw something recently about potentially having Iran not be allowed to participate in the World Soccer Cup. Like, I don't know, what is the international response to this stuff? Everyone just kind of taking it and letting it slide, or is Iran and the women there on their own?
No. There's quite a lot of sympathetic protests going on in cities around the world, US and Europe. And yes, they have been sort of blackballed by quite a few of these sports events. You'll be pleased to hear that.
Yeah, but what about the governments of countries like, Canada or US or England or, like, what is the response from the political leaders? Because that's really what counts, right?
Sanctions.
Sanctions.
What about? It's often said that while I approve the idea of sanctions, it is also known that sanctions often harm the people that you don't want to harm. What about sponsorship? Where does this government get its money from? I've been watching a documentary on History Hit about the Vietnam War, and the one thing that I learned from that, besides the history, is that, and even recent American history, if you look at somebody like Kanye West, you hit somebody where the wallet sits and then you make an impact. But you have to hit the right people in their wallets. So where does the Iranian government get its money from? Surely it must have some source of income.
They get
And
some of it. They get some of it by selling drones to Russia.
Yeah, and they also sell oil. I mean, there's
Yep.
And oil. And
but
oil.
they seem to be able to get around it.
Yeah. It's not necessarily the
Well, there's
West buying the oil. It might be China, it might be India, it might be other countries where scruples may not be the same.
I see
I just
Dr.
want to
Tai
ask-
is knocking on the door.
Yes, he is. Welcome, Ty.
Well,
It's good to be here. Thanks, Greg.
hello, Dr. Tai.
Hey, what's up, guys?
So just on the topic of oil and selling oil, so even if you're a climate denier, just the political effects of selling oil might inspire more people to go green, even if only because it means that more governments will have, more corrupt governments will have less access to funds. And I mean, China, communist Vietnam, Mozambique in Africa, also places like Sudan. If we go green, we will cut off the supply to funding for many oppressive regimes.
Absolutely, but it's not an overnight thing, unfortunately.
Good point, though. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing here is that the Iranian security forces are doubling down on their opposition.
Yeah.
And for them, it's not just law; it's also morality. They think it's actually immoral for a woman to uncover her head. Well, that's just crazy for everybody else in the world. It's an extreme and bizarre religious idea. And until it gets into the head even of the Iranian security people, I can't see much changing.
Yes. Dred, is it compulsory to wear a tricorn hat in Pastafarianism?
No, absolutely not. That's totally a voluntary thing. And it should be noted, too, that in British Columbia, where ICB says that it's making exceptions for people whose religion prohibits them from removing their religious headgear for purposes of identification, is bull. It's bull, because to accept or to recognize a prohibition of one religion, where do you stop? It is really a slippery slope. It's a tacit acceptance of prohibitions in religion, all the way, right? I mean, to say that they're accommodating women who are essentially forced to wear a hijab in British Columbia, it's the same thing as is in Iran. And so how I mean, it's like a cognitive dissonance for countries who are much more liberal to kind of say not say or protest Iranians. And I think I brought this up last week, was that like probably part of the reason that these more liberal governments don't say something about it is because then they would have to reflect upon their own practices, right?
Yes.
And
Well,
where does it stop?
In an earlier show, Ty and I were speculating because, of course, God appears now on Twitter with a blue tick because he's been verified. So I'm wondering whether he's issued some sort of memo that specifies all these taboos and prohibitions and necessities to various countries so that they dress correctly. Do you think that's the case, Ty?
So just as a update, I looked it up. It's God, Jesus Christ, the Prophet Muhammad, Jade, and there's no Flying Spaghetti Monster account as far as I'm
we're
aware.
gonna have to
As
work
far
on
as I
that.
look. You got to work on that. That's all I'm saying. But yeah. How great would it be if we just had like a direct, verified Twitter account from all of our supernatural beings, and we can just figure out what to agree on?
And he's only $8 a month.
Is God paying this $8? Yeah.
Well, I suspect he's got a sponsor for that because he doesn't do money well, does he?
Right.
No.
Anyway, moving on. You may or may not be aware that in London, there's a Persian language TV channel that's aimed at Iran. It's called Iran International. And I've been on it, but 2 British Iranian journalists are now threatened by Iranian security forces. The Metropolitan Police have notified the increase in these credible threats in London by Iranian authorities working externally, and it's not on. It's not cricket to do that sort of thing. It's just British soil.
Right.
What do you think of that?
So Iranian security forces are being directed to exercise their authority on people in Britain?
Yes.
Well, of course, the Chinese are doing
Well.
something similar, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, they only care about sovereignty when it's their own, I guess, eh?
It obviously points to cricket as being the solution here. If the Iranians start playing cricket, then everything will fall into place.
Well, speaking as a member of the tribe that's recently won the 2020 World Tournament in Australia, I think more cricket the better.
What is this fascinating sport you guys keep speaking of?
It's like baseball, but more complicated.
So like Quidditch, but less British? Is that what you're saying?
I'm all about lacrosse, personally, so.
Is that the Christian lacrosse? Oh, play on words. I don't know why I bother. Yeah.
Too soon.
Yes. So, but the Iranian guards, and what do they call themselves? The Iranian
Revolutionary Guards, those ones.
Yeah, that's the ones. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. They can't reach everywhere, apparently, even in Iran, where TikTok videos have escaped showing women in the street without scarves on their heads, and there's somebody holding up a camera in one hand, and he's fist bumping them as they go past, and they're accepting the fist bumps, and then he opens his fist, and contains a sweet, which they then take. So obviously their powers are limited. That's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Here's another goodish piece of news. You may remember that there was a horrific terrorist event in Kabul, Afghanistan, back, I think, in April, when a car bomb, no, it wasn't a car bomb, it was a suicide bomber, entered the Kaj Education Center and set off his bomb, killed himself, but he also injured about 50 people, killed and injured. No, 50 people were killed. Dozens were injured, mostly female students who were doing an exam, a preparatory exam, a mock exam, and these were sitting in the front row, and one of the survivors lost an eye and sustained severe damage to her jaw. Young girl Fatima Amiri, age 17. She has just sat her real exam that she was preparing for back then, and she's got 85%. And she is now qualified to enter university, and she's going to start studying in the new year.
So is that like their SAT, that kind of thing?
And I think it's higher up. I think it's school leaving and university entering level. So she says, on the day of the exam, I was a bit affected by the Kaj attack because my eye was in pain and I couldn't see the question papers properly. She went on to say, losing her eye in the attack only made her stronger.
Oh, no.
The tasks...
Sorry.
No, well, she doesn't specify. The tasks I was not able to do with both eyes, now I will do with one eye. So there you go.
I love that spirit. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's the spirit of Malala Yousafzai and people like that as well.
Yes, indeed. Anything you do to me merely makes me stronger. Yes. Okay, so Somalia, capital Mogadishu. There was a
John, before you continue, sorry,
Yeah.
I just want to make a quick interruption. I do think this channel has the purpose to educate our listeners as well, and I've posted a link. Just one step back to the protest in Iran. On the David Smalley podcast, episode number 621 is about a young woman. She's American, but she has a TikTok channel, and she's been arrested by the morality police. She lived in Iran for a year with her family. They eventually went back to the United States. It might be a very good idea for our listeners and our members to listen to that episode, because you actually hear a person who experienced it all speak very competently about her experiences and what she's doing to fight back. So I've posted the link in the chat as well. I think it's important that we hear from the horse's mouth what it's like, because it's important that we hear the real victims' voices.
Absolutely. It's a great big long link. So what I'll do is I'll tiny URL it and put it in the details afterwards. Okay?
It's David Smalley, episode 621. The David Smalley podcast, episode 621.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed, he's the president of Somalia, and he has said, so far, following this twin car bombing, the number of people who died has reached 100 and 300 are wounded. And the numbers continue to increase. That's after he visited the blast location. The Islamist group linked to Al-Qaeda, known as Al-Shabaab, have claimed responsibility.
In other words, they're proud of it.
Yeah. Who would be? You'd have to have a warped brain, wouldn't you, to be proud of that? I always think when the newspapers report this and they say that so-and-so has claimed responsibility, they ought to say, has accepted blame.
Much better.
Yeah.
Or has it?
John, if I can speak to that for a moment, our guest on Free Thought Productions last night was D.B. Breitenbach, who's a criminal lawyer in government employ in South Africa. And South Africa is one of the most violent countries in the world. And what I found interesting was that despite her 25 years of her working life dealing horrific violent crime on the side of the victim, her most recent book is about the ISIS insurgency in Mozambique. Now, ISIS, Al-Shabaab, brothers of another mother. And what I think maybe Guy's expression a moment ago conveyed to me is somebody like D.B. Breitenbach, who works with the most horrific examples of violent crime, said last night that she was more traumatized by writing about the ISIS insurgency into Mozambique than she is by what she has to deal with in her life, dealing with violent crimes like rapes and murders every single day.
Yes.
And I think that gives perspective on the things that happen in places like Somalia and Mozambique and other parts of it. And it's very scary for me to think that it's, Mozambique, the closest, in KZN, where I used to live, the closest border with Mozambique was 200 kilometers from where I lived.
Yes.
These things happen on our doorstep, well, not your doorsteps, but on my doorstep.
Yes.
And the suffering that people go through is just unimaginable.
Yes. The difference is, of course, she's been dealing with what you might call relatively small criminal activities, whereas these things are mass atrocities in Somalia. Yeah. Okay, well, I've got another piece of moderately good news, because In Norway, apparently, Jehovah Witnesses have been registered as a religious community since 1985, and their registration comes up for renewal at the end of this year. And the state administrator have notified them they're considering withdrawing the registration.
Now,
On
what,
that
does
basis.
that, what does that actually mean? That they can't worship there, or
And no, it means they won't be recognized as a proper faith.
Based
So-
on what?
But
Yeah.
Based on
I want
them
to ask-
not meeting the requirements to be registered.
$8 a month.
Yeah, that's what I would like to know. Like, if is it just a technical thing, or are they trying to get
Yeah.
to the root of what they believe as being the problem?
No, no.
I think in Norway, what happens is that a percentage of everybody's tax is taken and distributed to the religious organization that you declare on your tax return
Yeah.
that
Right.
you belong to. So the humanists in Norway get a lot of money because a lot of people say they're humanists. So
Yes.
that percentage of their tax, it may only be 0.1% or something, is given to the Humanist Society of Norway. So I think that it means that the Jehovah's Witnesses will lose a lot of their income.
Yes.
Ah,
Yes, you're absolutely right. Because in order they get a grant, it's called a grant, and there are conditions that they have to meet in order to qualify. And they have been given a deadline to correct their meeting of the conditions, or they will have the grant rejected.
Right. And so that
Yeah.
would,
Do we have any idea which conditions
Yeah.
they're not meeting?
I would
I don't
suspect
know
administrative,
anything
right?
about that.
Like a proper audit of the books, or filling out of the forms, or that kind of stuff.
Being able to read Norwegian.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it'll be things like gay equality and female equality and things like that. But we don't know. I mean,
No.
the interesting thing is the principle, because there have been attempts in the UK to deprive, for instance, the Scientologists of their charitable status.
Yes. Yes.
Different system. We have charitable status, and every charity can claim a subsidy from the government in relation to the donations that they get.
Hmm.
Yes. Yes.
And we like the idea of actually the state, the secular state, or a secular state, taking a view on some of the extraordinary, bizarre, and unacceptable beliefs and activities of these groups.
Yes. What they
that's
get
the only.
what they get in this country, as Guy was saying, is they get the tax back from the sponsor who's donated to the charity. And obviously we have the power to withdraw that consensus.
And there's probably like we have here in Canada, the statutory forgiveness of real estate taxes, property taxes, both on a provincial level. There's a statutory relief of property
That's
taxes
right.
for religious organizations
Yeah,
on the footprint of the building. But that, of course, is not enough, because then they go to the individual municipalities and appeal to them to give them further relief of whatever remaining tax burden is owing, which is probably like 10%. So there's a statutory relief of 90, and then they go after the next 10%. And of course, there's always a push to have their parking lots included as part of the footprint of their places of worship. It's crazy.
Yes.
Crazy.
Yeah, they'll try anything, won't they? Yes.
I'm worried
guess-
about this.
Go ahead.
My only concern about this is, in the event that they don't get the accreditation, they can spin it as a persecution complex fuel.
Sure.
And if there's one thing that people who aren't being persecuted love, is claiming they're being persecuted. So there's that.
That's very
Something
true.
else, just to add on to that, while I think it should be like that, it would be interesting to know what exactly the criteria is, because why only the Jehovah's Witness, and like Dr. Tai said, that could cause them to say we're being persecuted, and why. And then if the criteria is not set out very clearly, when do humanists lose their funding as well. And if you're only going to take the Jehovah's Witness off the list, why not the Catholic Church and all the other churches?
Yeah.
It could be a double-edged sword straight from Jesus' mouth if we don't watch out.
Yeah. Well, there's something else going on in Norway too. No, I think it might be Finland, where there's some sort of, I can't report on that at the moment because it's historic and I can't remember. But I know that there's something going on there, and the atheists are trying to stir it up because the husband of one of their MPs is a member of some religious sect, and she has been writing books supporting his faith, and of course that's not allowed because she's supposed to be secular according to their constitution. So follow that space. It'll probably come back again, like news does, comes around every few minutes. I've got some more good news, guys. Listen to this. The Bishop of Oxford has said the Church of England clergy should be able to bless and marry gay couples. He's apologized because his name is the Right Reverend Dr. Stephen Croft, and he said he's sorry that his views on same-sex marriage were slow to change and had caused genuine hurt, disagreement, and pain. But what's interesting is he's the most senior cleric in the Church of England so far to speak out in favour of same-sex marriage. And it's highly contentious within Anglicanism. To give you an example, Andrea Williams, who's chief executive of Christian Concern, said, "This is no less than apostasy. The gospel calls all people everywhere to repent, to turn away from their sins and towards Christ. And such a radical change to the nature of repentance, to the doctrine of marriage, alters the gospel itself. The archbishops now need to make clear that core teaching of the church on marriage and sexual morality is not up for debate or change. Bishops cannot be allowed to openly pronounce rank heresy."
Nice. It's funny how they're always pulled in kicking and screaming, eh?
Yeah.
I hear the ice cracking.
Indeed.
Yeah. That would be more in Norway than in England, but nevertheless.
Yeah.
But the other piece of good news, which is sort of related, has been in Ireland, where the Bishop of Kerry, Ray Brown, has apologized for derogatory comments made by one of his subordinates, Father Sean Sheehy, because the Sheehy's sermon condemned transgenderism, same-sex couples, and supplying condoms to teenagers. And the result was 30 parishioners walked out of Mass at his church, St. Mary's in Listowel. So there you go.
30 parishioners.
Wow.
Unfortunately, they're just going to another parish that is more accepting. It's not a change of mind. It's just a change of who they follow. So what?
No, but
They probably went to the.
it does reflect a complete change in the attitude to the clergy in Ireland. They used to have such huge authority that what they said was law, But now the public are taking a critical attitude to them and requiring them to kind of modernize and change. And
yes, well, it's not a sudden change though; it's an erosion, right? I mean, this is not a paradigm shift. This is a slow erosion, and somehow we see the lumps and the blips.
One at a time, please.
I was just wondering, is every sperm still sacred in Ireland?
I don't know. Can you imagine
divine.
what would happen if something like this went on in Kentucky, Frank? What do you think?
Well, it kind of is going on in Kentucky. We're adjusting to transgenderism, homosexual marriage. We're getting better at letting people pursue happiness in the way they wish. I mean, it's
Excellent.
slow, but we're making progress.
Good,
Well,
good.
It was, of course, I wasn't here for last week's show, but I had reported for Global Atheist News the fact that the results in from the 2021 census on religiosity, British Columbia, which is the lovely province wherein I reside, 52.1% identified as irreligious or not religiously affiliated. That's the first time in history it's a majority in Canada.
Yeah. That is good news indeed.
Good news. Yeah.
And
Of course,
Scott,
there wasn't an opportunity to indicate if you were a pastafarian, because I think that would have shifted the numbers a little bit.
Yeah, might have done. Yeah.
Scott, I want to ask, you might be able to comment on this as well, but something that touches on the topic of transgenderism and homosexuality is the fact that amongst young people, real scientific knowledge and understanding about sex and gender is becoming so much more available. I watched a documentary about, it was actually a 60 Minutes Australia program about transgender people and the variety of different physiological variations of gender manifestations, let me call it that in my commoner language. And young people are more and more aware of the scientific biological facts about gender and sexuality. And as that happens, hopefully, there will be more and more understanding, because in the generation that my kids are, they don't have the hang-ups that we used. Well, I didn't even have hang-ups. I didn't know that it was possible to be gay. The word gay, I was not familiar with it. And I mean, I matriculated 30 years ago. So, Scott, maybe you can talk to that as well, being a psychologist?
Psychiatrist.
Psychiatrist, yeah.
Right, which means at least I can prescribe myself medications.
Isn't that unethical?
But you're right. I work with people all across the spectrum, and for people under the age of 25, 30, there's sort of no resistance at all to somebody's declaration about their own gender, their own identity, their own pronouns. And there's no presumption that has to be in stone. If next month it's different, that's fine. It sort of reminds me of, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Star Trek alien race that has a symbiote inside that lives for many, many generations, and the symbiont goes from body to body across the symbiont's lifespan. The trill.
Yes.
And there's a great scene where a very staunch and commanding Klingon warrior meets the new body that contains the symbiont with whom he's been friends for many, many years. And he says, oh, my old friend Curzon Dax, I'm so glad to see you. And the person says, well, now I'm Jadzia Dax. And he simply says, oh, my old friend Jadzia Dax, it's so glad to meet you.
Yes.
And to see this, this very gruff, dangerous, kind of ugly warrior, so easily accepting of, well, now I go by a different name and I have slight differences, but you're still my old friend. That's all that matters to me.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah. Well, the internet, the media and the internet has done amazing things to educate people. I mean, I saw on somewhere, Facebook probably, a meme instructing you how to find the clitoris. Because that's not been widely available up till recently.
Can you send that link, please, John?
Yeah. Where's the YouTube link? Come on now.
Yeah, put that in the chat.
That's a joke. That's a joke.
Anyway, I want to show you a little clip now because, you know, with the midterm
Did you say
elections
clip
going
or
on in
clip?
the US. Clip.
Okay. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
You didn't even try.
So with the midterm elections going on, Trump has been holding rallies, and one of his rallies went wildly wrong when he introduced to the stage Kenneth Copeland.
Oh,
Take
goodness.
a look at this.
Christian televangelist lunatic Kenneth Copeland, and it got really weird.
There are things, this great state of Pennsylvania, liberty was born here. I've been accused of being a Christian nationalist. Our first president, 1789.
This is not slowed down, by the way.
This Bible, it's 17th chapter of Genesis, where God made covenant with Abraham. And he read that. And he bowed his knee.
Oh, God.
And he prayed.
Anyway, I won't play the full 2 minutes. Trump was completely bored during this and very clearly regretted bringing up Kenneth Copeland.
And half the crowd left while he was speaking, and of course,
Can I speak tongues?
and of course, the Republicans lost Philadelphia as the outcome of that.
Well, I mean, that's great. I mean, what seems to be happening is that you know, the mainstream of America are beginning to realize that these religious nutcases are religious nutcases. Now, how far has that got? But I mean, it can't happen too soon, really, can it?
Right. My
Well,
recommendation
and it was
would be
also-
everyone.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Everyone put down the Bible and just pick up more Star Trek episodes. I can handle any day more Trekkies than I could.
Absolutely, yeah. Bring on the trolls. Yes.
Yeah. Well, it was good to see also that in America with the midterms that it wasn't the blue wave that you know, many people thought that, you know, actually it was.
You mean the
pretty
red
balanced.
wave?
Or red wave? Yeah, whichever the good way.
Whenever I hear like terms like that from like people who are in America, I'm always like, "What the hell's going on? What's going on?" Oh my God, I'm always too sick to look it up on Google because I don't know if I want to be the president.
You have the colors the other way round to the rest of the world.
Oh, interesting. Oh, wow, really? Okay.
Yeah, red is the color of the.
Oh, red's the Republicans. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to say that
Wow.
I follow David Pacman as well, and there was another clip this week where it's become more and more clear that the Trump rallies are being styled like evangelical church services.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes, yeah.
music playing, and there was another clip in this 2 days ago where there was a pastor, and he told the audience to take out their imaginary arrows and beat the arrow on the ground, because if you beat the imaginary arrow on the ground, then obviously the person you want to win the election will win. And while it's clear that it seems that many American voters are realizing what's happening, I'm just a bit nervous that the a few in America is still a million, and
Yeah.
the effect of the music and this idea of spiritual warfare, it's still dangerous, because you just need one insane person
Yeah.
to do
Well, those-
something insane.
Yeah.
We got
Those-
them.
Those techniques have worked since time immemorial, immemorial, hasn't it? I mean, Hitler
It's getting
used
caught up
music.
in the collective effervescence is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Carrying on with the good news. I'm not sure how good. There's a Christian web designer who she's been requested to make websites for the marriages of gay couples. And she's found that very difficult because she says her evangelical religious beliefs prevent her from doing that. And there's a court case about this because they think that she's discriminating against them. And this court battle has reached the US Supreme Court, and she's arguing that she's trying to protect everyone's right to free speech by victimizing gay couples. Yeah. I don't understand what's going on.
You know, there was a similar case about the cake maker,
yes,
right?
Yeah, that's right.
You know,
yes,
so it's right along that line, isn't it?
Yeah, that was
being persecuted.
Yes, yeah. My privilege has been taken away. I'm being persecuted. Yes.
My right to not make gay cakes has been trampled upon.
How weird is this?
Oh,
anyway, she was interviewed, and she's got an office in the Denver suburb of Littleton, and her room is adorned with 2 crosses and a wooden plaque inscribed with a line from Ephesians, which says, "I am God's masterpiece."
Good for her. Is she priceless too?
So there you go.
I do think. Go on, Scott.
I think the Ephesians were also Star Trek characters, but I'm not sure.
Yes, that's from the old days. The old Star Trek.
I think it's time that we raised questions about the appropriateness of the crucifix. It's an obscene image.
Yes,
and
yes.
I think it should be exhibited in public, personally.
Yeah. Well, I think the Old Testament was Star Trek's prequel, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't. It's too violent. The Old Testament would never be allowed on television under any circumstances.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Going to Turkey, which, of course, you may know is technically a democratic and secular state. But, of course, the majority of the population are predominantly Muslim. And the president wants to support them because they vote for him. And so what's happened now is a long-distance bus driver's unwillingness to stop so that a passenger could pray has ignited a fresh debate over, who's the boss, the secularism or the Muslim side of this argument.
Well, did you just say stopping a bus so that one person can pray?
Yes.
Dude, get off the bus.
Yeah, they don't even do that as far as I know, in Iran. I mean, are they suggesting that the traffic should stop 5 times a day so everybody can pray?
Or even just one.
Can't God hear your prayers while you're moving?
No, because he doesn't have a Twitter account, which he should.
Okay.
And then you won't need to pray at all.
He's blue ticked. We know he has got a bird.
Yeah, absolutely.
For now.
Oh, yeah, that's smart, doesn't it? How long? So last week we reported about the Songs to the Polls initiative, which is a Christian attempt to get people to vote. And it wasn't just Christians, apparently. The Muslim American voters have also been got to the polls, and they've been encouraged by candidate forums at mosques, by knocking on household doors and holding community events, by organizations like Georgia Muslim Voter Project, Latino and Muslim Unity in Southern California, where you are, Scott, Engage, and the Council on American Islamic Relations. They've been doing this, get the Muslim souls to the polls. So some message about your constitution is not reaching home.
No, I'd actually say this is a good thing. As long as they're promoting voting, but not telling people who to vote for.
Yeah.
Once a religious organization is telling or encouraging or supporting voting one way or another, for one candidate or another, or one proposition or another, then they run afoul of the rules that keep them, that retain their nonprofit status and their tax exempt status. And the Christian churches in this country have been ignoring those rules since easily the 1980s, probably started in the late 70s, where a particular party, which in this country is identified with the color red, made a very direct and strategic move, and then the phone rang.
Sorry, Jeffrey, I'm on the show. I can't talk now. Sorry.
Is it God?
No. It's one of my council members. I'm the God. I'm the God. I'm the nearest thing to God. Is that not right, Guy?
Yes, of course I agree.
Okay. So, right. Moving on. Christian web designer, we've done that. Bus driver, we've done that. Oh, yes. Calvin University. Now, the university, some of the Christian, this one is owned by the Christian Reformed Church, a Dutch Calvinist denomination. And that's
my previous denomination.
Yeah, listen up then. That's in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And they've had a problem because one of their faculties has had difficulty because they want to dissent from a clause that requires them to abide by the Christian Schools Declaration of Mission or whatever it is. And but what's happened, what's interesting here is the Board of Trustees has allowed them to dissent on the grounds that their individual statement of confessional difficulties can mean that they remain in good standing, despite the fact that they haven't agreed to the confession of faith that regards sex outside of heterosexual marriage as sinful. So that's quite tolerant, don't you think?
Yeah, that sounds like a move in the right direction.
Yeah.
Tolerance.
And this is going to be, if this holds up, it will be a huge change to the religiously owned universities and hospitals and so forth across the United States.
Yeah.
In most of the religiously owned universities and hospitals, etc., you do have to sign a pledge that you will abide by their standards and you will accept their teachings. Nobody really monitors it that much, but if you make a public statement contrary to the church that owns your institution, you can indeed be let go without any further cause.
Yeah.
And this is a huge crack in their facade.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Their privileges are not being interpreted as a right. Hooray. It's not happening in Qatar, though, unfortunately, because, as you know, the Football World Cup final is being staged there. And one of their former international players, Khalid Salman, said that the LGBTQ plus people attending the tournament should accept our rules. And of course, the rules in Qatar is that homosexuality is illegal because it's considered immoral under Islamic Sharia law. And what he said was, homosexuality is haram. You know what haram means?
Yep.
When asked why it was haram, he added, I'm not a strict Muslim, but it's because it's damage in the mind. And then the interview was stopped by an accompanying official. So they're realizing.
Are they going to establish this? Are they going to examine people to find out if they're trans? Are they going to ask anybody? How do they have dogs that sniff out gay people?
Well,
I mean, how are they going to?
They've got no way of enforcing it, of course. But what's interesting here is that they are recognizing that view that homosexuality is a damage to the mind is unpalatable internationally.
Right.
Comment on that, Scott?
Only that this is one of the cases where we see capitalism and commercialism actually taking a stance against such extremist views, because those views will cause the World Cup to lose money.
Yes. Money is the god. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's too bad that that's what's driving it, right?
Yeah.
It's not about morality or sensibility. It's about money.
Yeah.
Terrible.
How much money did they spend on this already? I think it was
Well,
the most any other country had ever
Yeah.
combined.
Huge amounts. Yeah. Finally, and you'll really like this because it chimes with what you were talking about, happened in Canada recently with the census results, Dread. But this is a recent study that's released by the Cultural Research Center of Arizona Christian University, and it revealed that 7 out of 10 adults claim to support traditional moral values in America, but there's a significant transition in the public perception of the Bible's role in defining traditional moral values. The survey revealed that traditional moral values include integrity, justice, kindness, non-discrimination, trustworthiness, free expression, property ownership, individual self-expression, and self-control. Mostly good stuff, you'd think. But what they say now is that doesn't come from the Bible. It comes from what you feel in your heart.
Whoa.
It's another step in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Suddenly, Global Atheist News Review has turned cuddly. Who'd have thought? Who'd have thought that?
Frank, I'm a bit more cynical, I suppose, because if morality is what you feel in your heart, then
That's problematic.
that could be problematic, because not too long ago in my own country, it was moral to discriminate against people of color, and if you just feel that in your heart, then I would.
Well,
It's moral relativism, right?
but look, let's face
It's an
it.
argument from intuition.
Morality is relative to some degree.
Yeah. Let's
Yeah,
not get
yeah.
too deeply into this, guys, because we're coming to the end of the show.
No.
This is a big subject, and
Yeah, we can make a whole show about that sometime in the
We
future.
need to start making these whole shows, because
Yeah,
we've got
okay.
at least 4 topics that I'd like to have a whole show about.
Okay. I hear you. You're pushing me to work harder. I can do that. Don't worry. Yeah, but in this case, and in a lot of cases, the word heart, the concept of heart, is being used metaphorically, isn't it? Let's face it, it's a pump.
It's a problem, yeah.
Yeah, well, but
So I did have one last news item that came to my attention.
Okay.
That that Putin has outlawed poutine in Russia. You know why that is?
I don't.
Because he hates Kurds.
Okay.
because it what?
Kurds. They use curds, cheese curds.
Oh,
make
right.
poutine.
Jesus. Yes.
No,
It's a joke.
you've
Sorry.
lost me.
Trying
You've lost-
to land on a light.
We left morality for this. We could have thrown in 14 more comments, but we have
I'm going to have to
Namaste,
go look that up
namaste.
now. Can you give me a citation, please?
I think Putin, if you pronounce it in French, means whore, doesn't it?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Bye then.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Say bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Here we go.
Well,
Several clergy in Russia.
So was the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the Kaliningrad.
Yeah, that's a good question.